Welcome to another episode of Whitetail Rendezvous, coming to you 6 days a week as we interview whitetail experts and hear their traditions and personal stories of the hunt. Learn more about the latest gear, discover proven tips, and the latest strategies so you can make your next hunt a success. Now, here's your host, Bruce Hutchin.
Welcome to another episode of Whitetail Rendezvous. This is your host, Bruce Hutchin, and we're heading out east, and we're going to connect with an alumni of Whitetail Rendezvous, Tyler Skowronski. Tyler, welcome back to the show.
Yeah, I'm super stoked. Happy to be an alumni of Whitetail Rendezvous. It's been a little time.
Well, and HIIT, what's that all about?
Yeah, so HIIT is the platform that I developed. So it's a way for me to promote the ethical enjoyment of the outdoors. It's an acronym also, like you said, HIIT, and it stands for Honor, Integrity, Instinct, and Tradition. So those are 4 words that kind of sum up what the outdoors means to me, how I take to the outdoors, how I engage in the outdoors. And yeah, like I said, all 4 of those are things that mean a lot to me and how I've grown up to be the hunter and outdoorsman that I am now.
You know, and people can go back, just look up Tyler and HIIT, and you can find his previous show. But we're going to stay right with the honor, integrity, and instinct and tradition, because today hunting's under pressure. You know, it's under attack. And so how do you see what you're doing helping combat that?
Yeah, so like I said, those are, moral guidelines or things that I go to the field with. So even if you just look at the first one, honor. I was an athlete all the way through when I was young till I got through college. So I always had like a athletic background, but I kind of transferred that, especially after college, a little bit in college, but after that to make sure that like I train at the gym and I take that same practice when it comes to practicing my bow or shooting my gun, because I think it's our job in honoring the animal. You're also trying to make sure that when you decide to make that shot, that you're going to give them the fastest, most ethical kill that you can, because that's what they deserve. I mean, you're taking their life, and that's a heavy thing to take onto your shoulders. And I think people that don't support hunting don't see that side of it. They just think that it's a murder act or something like that. But, we need to honor the game that we take and try to make it as peaceful as it can be, because their lives are nourishing us. So I think that they deserve our respect to come as prepared as possible into those situations.
So I hear you say honor the hunt or honor the harvest in the game that we're chasing. What other things do you feel that hunting mold you as a person?
We could probably talk a whole hour just on that question, but everything from understanding the fact that when you go into the woods, you're taking a weapon. So there's a lot of responsibility that falls on your shoulders with that aspect. You need to be safe for yourself. You need to be safe around, other people that might be also engaging in the outdoors. But once again, you have to be well-rounded in knowing the weapon so that when you go to take an animal's life, that you are ethical in doing so. So building that structure, especially at a young age, even more so, but I know a lot of people that are getting into it are starting later in life, which is fine too. That develops you to be a more thoughtful person, I think, because you understand that there's consequences with your actions. And in hunting, where our consequence, for lack of a better way of saying it, is we're taking a life, even though that's the intent. But you learn to respect that. And I think respect is a big thing, and respect and honor you can use them interchangeably. But I think that by learning those things through hunting, it allows you to convey that in your daily life too.
So it helped mold you as a man.
Yeah, most definitely.
Because a lot of people, I think about it today, and we don't have a lot of opportunities to challenge our character or build our character. Yes, athletics does that, but there's none better than the out of doors. And that could be spending time hiking, fishing, or just in the out of doors, and spending that time in the natural state was very important to me. And obviously it's been very important to you, and it's helped mold you as a person.
Yeah, most definitely. That you sparked me to think of even saying it this way. When you go into the outdoors, it's totally different from the mainstream, like you were just saying, where nowadays people are so used to knowing that if I do A, B is going to be the result. And that's the end of it. If I click call on my phone, it's going to call my mom. There's so many things like that have happened with this technological era that I think people are just so scripted and they know what's going to happen that, like you said, getting into the outdoor worlds, even if you're just out hiking and just engaging in the outdoors in general, you never really know what's going to happen. If I step on that log, is it going to break? How am I going to handle that situation? If it rains, am I prepared? So it makes you problem solving skills are developed even in just engaging in the outdoors, which is another thing I think some people lack nowadays that can be so beneficial as a young person, once again, or anytime in life to learn those things.
Okay, you're out in the woods, you're hiking, fishing, camping, hunting, and all of a sudden you slip on a rock, break your ankle, and you don't have cell service. What are you going to do?
Are you asking me like if this was real life situation?
Yeah, what are you going to do?
Okay, so my father and my grandfather also have military background. So I don't want to say I'm cheating and knowing that I kind of grew up being prepared for those kind of situations. But in my situation, if I broke my ankle, I'm all by myself. Let's just assume we're 10 miles back because we're out camping or something or hiking. First thing I would do is I'd try to find a stick that was close by so I could do some sort of splint to add structure to the ankle. Because obviously I'm going to have to get myself out or get myself to a point where I have to have cell service to help myself get help. Then I would have to try to figure out if I can put any pressure on it whatsoever. If not, find something that's going to allow me to have structure. So maybe another branch, or if I have a trekking pole already, anything like that. And then my third thing would be I would look at the gear that I have and see what is the most important, because obviously the more weight you have on, the worse it's going to be for putting pressure on your foot. So then I would get rid of some stuff that I might not need in order to get myself out, knowing that I can always come back for stuff if it's not important.
So the biggest thing I've been taught is don't do anything. Just assess the situation. Figure what resources you have and say, okay, this is what I got. I got a broken ankle. I can't put any weight on it. So I've got to splint it. And then I've got to crawl or somehow get a crutch and do the best I can and get the hell out of there. Or get back to where I can get some semblance of opportunity to rescue. If that's building a fire, attracting attention, or whatever you need to do. But that's just, see, you know how to do that. And I think young people today don't know how to do that.
No, yeah, I would definitely agree. I mean, I even know there's this other guy that I recently met on Instagram named Colin, and he's starting a program called Activate the Hunt. And that's for much younger people. And he was asking me if I wanted to help be a mentor on it. So I was telling him I'd be down for that. And I've met some of the people that are engaging with him and I've talked to them and stuff like that. And even little stuff, like when I go in the woods, when I hunt public land, most of the time it's anywhere from 1 mile to 2 miles from the parking area, depending on what property I'm on and all these different kinds of things.
What state are you in again?
I'm in New York, Western New York. So I'm not anywhere near the crazy city, but I'm about an hour north of Pennsylvania on the western side of New York.
So are you near Buffalo?
Yeah, just outside of Buffalo.
Okay.
So yeah, like I was saying, even simple stuff like that, I've never been lost in those woods. I know most of them like the back of my hand, but I always have a small first aid pack that's probably only about yay big, but it's got some gauze, some bandages, some rubbing alcohol, and then a lighter. And I take the old film dispenser bottles, with the gray caps on them.
Yeah, the canister.
Yeah. I take that and the linen trap from my laundry. You stuff as much of that in there as you can because it keeps getting packed down really small. And that thing, if you hit it with a spark, it immediately lights up. So I have tinder right away if I ever need it. I've never had to open it and use it. But if I'm bow hunting, I don't have a bullet to cut open. And if I'm gun hunting, if it was a real survival situation, you don't want to use a bullet that you might have to use in a different situation, So just little stuff like that. But people don't think that way anymore, like you were saying. And I had the benefit of being raised by an awesome family that they made me think that way. And God forbid I ever have to use any of those skills, but at least I'm confident that I have them if I was ever put in that situation.
One thing I add from the lint, it's late in the day, folks. You can get cotton balls or lint and roll them in petroleum jelly.
Yeah, I've heard people say that before too. So it holds a longer flame instead of...
It'll hold a longer flame. It won't flash on you. So I have, I'm not going to say dozens, but on every trip, I've got 2 or 3, no matter if I'm just going to be a quarter mile from my car.
Right, yeah. There's no reason not to. There's so many small things, like a flint stick or a lighter and something like that. They always say, if you ever watched even the survival shows, fire is such a mental thing too, to help people get through difficult situations. And like I said, my little survival kit's only this big. I can put it in my back pocket. It's a little bit bigger than my wallet, so there's almost no reason. Like you said, even if you're only a quarter mile from your truck, there's no reason to put yourself in a worse situation. God forbid anything happens.
But I broke my ankle. I'm not moving, so I can crawl around, I know I can build a fire. So I get all the fire started, and I lay that out and wait somebody to come down because they seen smoke, and they go, there shouldn't be smoke there.
Right. That's not a camp area. Why is there smoke?
Yeah, there's not smoke, and then they'll come down and you're out. And if you have to stay tonight, then you get a fire and it keeps you warm, and it is comforting. I mean, eons of time ago, the Inuits and the people that came across the land bridge, I mean, that was their life. I mean, they used to carry just coals with them in pouches. So they always had fire.
Yeah, definitely.
That's amazing. Yeah. So what we're talking about is skillcraft, and Tyler, he's into that. And when you talk about the integrity of the hunt, explain that a little bit more and why that is so important for a hunter.
Yeah. So I think since the last time we talked, I've even got a better grasp on, it's one of those things that all these words, I knew what they meant to me, but it wasn't always as easy to express it. And over, it's been about 2 years, I think we said, since we had the chance to talk. So now I've got an even better grasp on it. So hopefully this is even better to understand for people who have listened to our first one and then maybe now this one. But integrity correlates, or not exactly be defined as, but is having strong moral guidance. So when I look at it that way, I think it's really important to have integrity and use that as a way of saying you need to stand up for what you believe in, stick up for it. And I think that, like you said, with the hunting community being under fire, we need to understand why we're doing it. Because if someone asks you, why do I hunt? Oh, I like killing stuff. That's not going to go over well with someone that doesn't understand our lifestyle. Because from talking to you the last time and now talking to you this time, I know and I enjoy talking to you because you're like me. Like, you enjoy hunting for more than just the killing aspect. And that's what people need to see. So people need to know why they're doing something, and you need to be able to stick up for everybody to express why we're so passionate about the outdoors and be able to have a strong argument for people that don't support our lifestyle. Because I've said to other people, I think some of my greatest conversations have been with people that don't support hunting, but are open to listening, because that dialogue there, now they might never ever get into it. Hopefully they do, but at least they have an understanding of our life. They won't be the advocates against it as much.
At least you can, I like to call it common ground. You just meet a middle ground or a common ground where you're willing to disagree. You agree to disagree.
Sure.
But they have some meaningful conversation rather than an emotional conversation.
Right. Yeah. A meaningful conversation instead of like an emotional argument back and forth where nobody's
going to win.
Right.
It's impossible. It never can happen.
Yeah, never. I've had those too. Don't get me wrong. There's some people that just don't want to listen. But like I said, in my personal life, I think some of my most exciting or memorable conversations have been with anti-hunters. And some of them I know I wouldn't even call them anti-hunters, the people that I've talked to in person. But there's people that I've talked to on social media that straight up, their first comment is telling us how horrible of a person we are. So then I'll send them a message, because I'm not trying to make them look bad in the comment section or something. That's not what it's about. So I'll send them a message and have a longer conversation about it. And it ends with them thanking me for the information I gave them and enlightening them on why I am so passionate and so many others are so passionate about the outdoors. And then now they have a better understanding, like you said, and that conversation, instead of an emotional argument, went a lot farther for us as an outdoor community than getting into an argument and trying to make them look bad in the comments section and trying to like flex your muscles over social media.
In my opinion, we are our own worst enemies when it comes to social media. I have few and far between, but I get them. Some I just delete, and others just depends on the day. I'll private message them and go, you don't even know me. So how can you even say that?
Right.
You have no idea who I am.
Yeah. I think with developing the platform and the name that I came up with, I think I tried to take that onto my shoulders even more, because like you said, there's times where I just want to be like, oh, I don't want to deal with this person right now, that they're blowing me up for no reason. I didn't do anything wrong. In doing that, I think I've taken it on my shoulders to make sure that I take every chance I have to enlighten those people. And like I said, I would love to see them get involved. And there's people that have asked me to guide them in certain directions after our conversation because they want to even just get into shooting archery. They don't want to hunt, but they just want to shoot archery. So I'll help them out any way I can. I've looked up bow shops in like Bozeman, Montana to try to figure out where this person can get hooked up or whatever like that and try to help them out. Because if I'm going to promote a lifestyle that is all these things, I should also help out those people that don't understand it and try to bridge that gap like you had said.
And it's hard. It's definitely not easy. But one part I really love about Whitetail Rendezvous what's happened with this journey is here I am, 70-some years old. And here you are, 20-something years old. We're having a meeting conversation that age doesn't really matter. It's what our passion is, what we're passionate about. And that brings me to your next thing, instinct. What's that about?
Yeah, that one I think is a really cool one that I think is easier for people to relate to, even if they're newer. Because for me, it's not just about the instincts that I might have or that you might have, because we've been doing it long enough that we already have them. I think the most exciting conversations to have are with the people that are newer at it and they're finally tapping into some of those little things and learning on top of it. So I like to correlate the instinct part also with learning, because when you learn how to tap into those instincts and you learn how to put a couple different things together, that's where people really start to enjoy the outdoors. Because I think if people go out with the sole intent of just killing and not learning about the game that they're going after or learning about the terrain or learning how to prepare yourself. I mean, you and me both know whitetail hunting, you could hunt early season and it could be 60, 70 degrees depending on where you are. But you could get into the late season and it could be sub-zero. So learning how to prepare yourself for all those different situations and trying to forecast how you think the hunt's going to go, which obviously we know it's never always exactly how we want it to. But I think the instinct is not only just following the instincts that we all have, whether you think you have them or not, because you look back at the cavemen and hunter-gatherers, it's in everybody. Whether or not you want to tap into it, it's there. Anybody can do it. So it's doing that piece while also allowing yourself to learn and be open to what Mother Nature has to teach you are the two pieces of that instinct part of my platform that are really exciting to talk to people about.
How old were you when you first went hunting with your grandfather or father?
Yeah, so I've only been hunting with my grandfather a couple times because he actually, before I was born, moved to Illinois. So I haven't had the opportunity to do too much deer hunting with him. I have done some like pheasant hunting and stuff like that. But my first memories of hunting in general would be when I was knee-high to a grasshopper and standing next to the deer my dad shot. I had like a Red Ryder and a sucker in my mouth taking pictures and stuff, poking the eyes. But I think the first time I ever went hunting, it was definitely bow season because my mom had a big to-do about like making sure that I was old enough that I was safe around guns and stuff like that, even though I wasn't shooting. So it was definitely bow hunting first. And I was probably, I'd say maybe 9, 10 years old the first time I ever went out hunting. In New York, you couldn't carry any type of weapon until you were 12, you could small game hunt. And then 14, you could start bow hunting for whitetails. So I was much younger when I first started going hunting with my dad. And then, obviously there's a big learning curve there because even though I wasn't hunting, I was learning stuff from my dad the whole entire time.
So is that 15 years, 20 years of hunting experience?
Yeah, I'm turning 25 in July, so that's probably just over 15, 16 years.
Yeah. What are the biggest things that your dad taught you about hunting?
I'd say that you can veer down two paths with that question. In the one sense, he taught me a lot of things about tracking, reading deer sign, understanding the terrain and how deer move through the terrain, and identifying travel corridors and what an actual deer trail is. As a kid, you just think it's mud going through the woods, a trail. So he taught me all those things. But I think the bigger thing that he taught me, and, he always jokes that I took it to the next level with HIIT, was the honoring the game and all that kind of stuff. And that was one of the first things that he told me when we were going out hunting, you gotta be real quiet. But buddy, you know, we're here. We're going to take a life. That's what we're here to do. And we're going to do it so that you and me and mom and your brother can eat. It's not always easy. And it's okay if you're emotional during it, because it shows that you have a heart. I mean, I'll be the first one to admit, I love hunting and I love getting game and being able to provide for my family. And that goes back on that tradition piece, because it's always been in my family. As far back as you can find pictures, there's people that have been hunting in my family. There's a piece of me that's kind of lost with every animal that I take, because there's a strong connection between living and taking life. And that's something that my dad developed in me from a really young age. And I truly, truly appreciate it. I couldn't thank him enough for it. And I try to every day. But I think that helped develop me not only as a man, but as a hunter, and respecting the game that I'm going after. And you could break down all those different pieces again and say how that developed from that one thing that he always tried to teach me as a young kid.
Thanks for sharing that. So did you hunt last fall?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I'm out as much as I can.
All right. Now, so how did you do? Tell us about the 2018 season.
Okay, so 2018 was actually, it was one of my, I hate to say the worst years, but it was a weird year because the piece of public land that I do most of my hunting on is like 1,500 acres. So I got lots of ground that I can cover. Well, for New York, I know out west there's super, super big chunks, but so I hunt that the most with my dad. We camp at a campground of people that we're buddies with. Then we just base camp out of there and go to that state land. There's a couple other pieces we can hunt, but there's this area that I call the Heaven Ridge, and we talked about it actually not with that name, but in our first podcast where I had harvested my first big buck at the time, and I harvested a really nice black bear up there, all on this ridge. Well, in the last 3 years, I've harvested 7 deer out of the same stand on that ridge. And
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So
it's a hunting hole. Don't tell anybody where it is.
That's why I just call it the Heaven Ridge. I don't tell anyone where it is.
No.
I even brought my buddy up there this year. So that was the cool thing. So I ended up, my buddy Cody is a super big waterfowl hunter. So he got me into waterfowl hunting when I was in college. He was a freshman when I was a senior. So we've been best friends ever since. Well, he had taken me out duck hunting a couple times. So I kept telling him, I was like, dude, you got to skip a duck hunt. You got to come deer hunt with me. I want you to get a deer. So he ended up hunting up in the Adirondack region together last year, which was awesome. And there was no heat and he wasn't ready. And I was like in a sling hammock and all this kind of stuff. So that was an awesome hunt. We didn't get one. And he ended up coming out with me later after he had actually harvested his first deer with the bow back at school. So I was super stoked for him for that. You know, that was actually probably one of the highlights of my season. So he finally came down. He had a doe tag still. And not that you can manage public land, obviously, but I've gotten to the point, and I have nothing, don't get me wrong, I have absolutely nothing wrong. Like these 2 deer I'm probably more proud of than my shoulder mounts that are in the house. That's my first archery buck, and that's my first gun buck. You know, that one's like barely a 5-point, but
it doesn't matter.
I've got nothing wrong with people shooting small deer, but I've gotten to the point where I just enjoy being in nature, and I'm okay with passing those deer now. Like I said, I have absolutely nothing wrong. I'll be the first one to pick someone up and spin them in circles. If they're excited, I'm excited. That's all I care about. So I'd been waiting all season. I had passed up on a bunch of deer like that size and smaller bucks and spikes and all that. So I brought my buddy up onto the Heaven Ridge. So he was super excited because he had never been there. And so we sit down and it just breaks light and he's like texting me. So I brought him up and he was 200 yards away from me down this trail. And I was where the ridge kind of pinches a little bit more in my favorite tree, which he would have been in that tree if he didn't already shoot his bucks. I would have wanted him to shoot one before me anyway. So he's texting me, telling me like, dude, I think I see a 4-pointer, or maybe it's a 6-point. I think it's a 6-point. It might even be bigger than that. So I'm like looking through the trees back towards him, and there's a logging road, and the way that the terrain features work, this logging road is up on top of the ridge. So it's kind of the funneling point, and it's an easy place for them to travel. As we know, that's where deer want to be if they can be. And so I look down and here comes this buck. I'm like looking at it. I was like, wow, that's a big body on that deer. I wonder how big the rack is. And he keeps getting closer, and it ended up being an 8-pointer. And I was like, I got my best friend at camp. My dad's at camp. I'm shooting this thing. So he comes in at like 7 yards, and I just, boom. And it was one of those perfect, crisp, quiet November days. So 200 yards away, my buddy could hear the impact hit this deer. And I mean, double lunged him. He took off. I mean, my buddy could hear him crashing, and it's open hardwoods. It's not even like a thicket. So he wasn't bombing through stuff. So he came over. He was all stoked. I got that deer with the bow. I didn't take any does this year down there. I didn't have a doe tag. So he come back opening weekend of gun hunting for deer season up here in New York, because he skipped duck hunting because he was wanting to come out with me again. I was like, all right, dude, we're going to get you your first public land deer. We're going to do this. So long story short, the morning didn't really pan out to anything. So he walks over to my stand, and we're sitting there, and he looks out in the distance, and he's like, oh, dude, look, there's a tail right there. And I'm thinking to myself, we're not going to go stalking deer. Public land hunting in New York, it's chaos because there's so many people. So me and my dad have found that you're better off just sitting all day, because you never know what guy's just going to start walking around. And that's when you tend to see some of the best deer movement, because you get into those little pockets where nobody is. And those deer try to get away from everybody else that's walking around. And then by the time they get to you, they're relaxed again and you're ready to rock, So that's how this ridge is most of the time. So he sees this deer and he's like, should we go stalk him? And I was like, sure, if you want to go stalk him, let's go stalk him. So we kind of walk over, and it comes to a point there. And I was like, all right, I want you to go, because they were moving from left to right. So I was like, I want you to go all the way to the right until you see that next ravine. It's probably maybe 100 yards between the two of us. I said, we'll both walk this way. And that way, if I see anything over here, if they didn't move as far as we thought they did, they're going to run towards you and not towards me, because I wanted him to get a deer, like I said. So we start walking down this finger, and all of a sudden just boom! And I look over, and he's like jumping up and down, looking at me and everything. And I ran over there, and he shot a spike he said as soon as he got where I told him to get to, he started walking in, and he looked up, and this spike was trying to tend a doe and was like pushing other does around. And he threw the rifle up and shot her and dropped him, and he went like rolling down in the ravine. So we did the whole like prohibition style, put him on a log, tied him up. Because I got videos that me and him, he played college lacrosse too. So we're in good shape, right? And we're coming out of this like steep gully, and we're just dying. And so we finally get this thing out, and we're all high-fiving. He goes, well, by the way, I got to leave. I was like, what do you mean you got to leave? He's like, well, I got a really big test at school on Monday. Now that I got a deer, I should probably leave and study for it. I was like, oh, you jerk. I was like, you jerk. I get your deer out of the woods. You're not even going to stay for the whole opening weekend. I was like, all right, go. I know you got to do good at school. I don't blame you. So I go back up to the same spot the next day, and I'm sitting there, and there was these two dogs, which I saw 2 or 3 years ago. I saw these two dogs. It's a boxer and something else. I don't know whose dogs they are. They were literally running deer around. I could see the deer out in front of them, and the dogs would come up like 2 minutes later, and the deer would go all the way over here, and the dogs were sniffing and stuff. And so they kept pushing all these deer around, and I was just about to get out of the tree stand and move to a different spot. And I told myself, just sit for like 5 more minutes. Your dad said he was going to call you at noon, so you'll sit till then and make a game plan. And I look up, and this gorgeous 9-pointer was coming right off of the south face of this ravine where I know they bed, and that's why I set up this way. And he came up, and I almost brought my bow, because I keep telling myself I want to take a deer with the bow during gun season in New York, because most of the time, especially on public land, they're just so scared. It would just be so difficult, but I think it would be fun to try. And this buck comes in right at probably, I think I shot him at 40 yards, but he was walking towards me. As long as I didn't spook him, I could have shot him with my bow, because he was walking right towards the base of my tree. I was super excited because it was probably the best video I've ever gotten. I put it all together and put it on my YouTube channel. But I just slammed him.
What's that channel so if somebody wants to see it? What's your channel?
Yeah, so my YouTube channel is the same as my Instagram. It's titled Hitting the Dream. So it's a little play off of Living the Dream, because me being able to engage in the outdoors and share all these awesome stories with awesome people like you is how I live my dream. So there's the little play on words. It's Hitting the Dream.
Hitting the Dream on YouTube.
Yeah, so I ended up getting that buck. If I would have listened to what I was telling myself to do, I'd have completely missed the opportunity. But just waiting that extra 5 minutes for my dad to call played out perfect. This buck came up. I shot him. He died within, he was at 40 yards. He ran 40 yards behind me, died on camera. I got everything on film. It was just a super awesome thing. I've actually never taken a really nice buck with the gun. All the deer I've ever taken have been with the bow, the good ones, because that's when you have the least amount of pressure. Because in New York, as soon as gun season starts getting there, after opening day, it's like drives everywhere, especially on public land. People just start doing deer drives all the time. So it gets really hard to try to find those spots where, because the thick cover is obviously where they're going to do the deer drive. So you can't go there. And then you try to get away from someone, and all of a sudden there's another dude that, like I said, it's just so saturated with hunters come gun season that that's typically when I'm really not even the most excited to hunt. I just love bow hunting so much. So I was super stoked to finally get that deer. And I just did a European mount on him. I just got to pick it up from my buddy's house. We were just finishing him up because my other buddy, he just bought property and he just got his first nice buck on it. So he was excited for that too.
Now, are you a turkey hunter?
Yeah.
Is that a turkey fan behind you?
Yep. That was actually my first turkey. I shot him last year with the bow. That's also on my YouTube channel. I shot him at 52 yards with my bow in an open field. So that one was pretty exciting. But yeah, I mean, pretty much anything, whether I'm good at it or not, anyone can make their decision on that. But I just love the outdoors so much that anytime I can engage in the outdoors, I'm going to do it. I like my brother and his fiance and my girlfriend. We did a big, went up into the Adirondack region and went in there's one lake that's connected to then by a little river system to a really remote pond. And we like kayaked all the way into it with our dogs and all this stuff and camped for a week. And pretty much anything that's outdoors, I've either tried it or do it every year. So yeah, definitely. I just got another turkey this year on that same property. And then this one was on private property here closer to home.
You are living the dream.
I'm trying, man. I'm trying.
So what are you doing for work these days?
I recently just got a new job actually with the municipality that I work in town here. I work for the town. Before that, I was an arborist. So I climb trees, cut them down, prune them, all that kind of stuff. So I've kind of floated around a little bit. Out of college, I worked for a asbestos remediation company that we project monitored for other companies that were removing it. So making sure they were doing everything by the law and all that kind of stuff, make sure everything was super clean. So I've kind of dabbled in a little bit of everything. Like my dad said, it's always a good thing to be a jack of all trades, even if you're a master of none.
So sitting here thinking about and talking about hunting, what advice would you give somebody that wants to get into hunting, begin hunting, and let's just stay with archery hunting?
I've had this question a number of times. So if I could give two pieces of advice, one piece would be choose your weapon, like you said, just archery hunting. My bow is probably one of the more top of the line ones, but it's also because I do 3D tournaments all the time. I trained a hunt event where I shoot my bow. I mean, I put so many arrows through my bow, I got to buy a couple dozen a year because I blow them up, shooting them and hitting each other and all. But you don't need to spend that much money on a bow. You need to get yourself into something that you, A, feel comfortable shooting, and B, enjoy shooting. So I tell people all the time, I love Hoyt, but you don't have to shoot Hoyt. If you can find a trade show or if you can find a bow shop close to you that carries multiple brands, go and shoot multiple bows, see what feels the best. They'll walk you through the steps of how you anchor, all that kind of stuff. There's no reason to be nervous about it because they're going to be excited to get you into a bow anyway. And then buy one that fits your budget, because ruining the experience right off the bat because you spent too much money and then you don't get into it is going to ruin the whole experience for you. So I tell people, if you're going to spend any money though, spend it on your weapon and everything else can come second. Like I grew up buying all my camo clothes from like Walmart, the cheapest stuff that you could buy, because that and hand-me-down clothes is all I wore for probably at almost the first 10 years of my life. So you don't need the big fancy camo to get into hunting. I will say as you move up, you're probably going to want to, just because what I've realized is the more expensive stuff is more comfortable. It's not so much even the pattern all the time, is I just think that they're made better. They're more durable. So definitely spend your money on getting yourself into a piece of equipment that lets you enjoy shooting it and enjoy getting out there and practicing, and let the other stuff fall as it may as you get more deep into hunting in general. And then the second thing that I would say would be learn your game and choose one thing to start with. Don't try to throw everything on your plate right away, because if you try to like deer hunt and turkey hunt, duck hunt and goose hunt all at once, I mean, there's a lot of learning curve with all that. And it's not to say that you can't start getting into them all pretty quickly after, but just get your feet wet. Get in there. If you're going to choose deer, learn how deer move. Understand where you're hunting. If you're hunting ag fields and stuff like that, understand that the deer are going to bed in a thicker area. They move out to the ag fields at night to feed. And start to understand that, because just understanding how one animal moves is going to teach you so much more about the other animals anyway, that there won't be as big of a learning curve in the beginning when you start another type of hunting. And that'll help you enjoy that as well. So I think learning your game and how they interact with the topography or the land that you're hunting will help you be more successful, and it'll help you enjoy it more because you're going to feel like you're actually engaging in the outdoors and not just sitting out there and wondering, oh, this guy, especially like you said, with social media nowadays, some people I think take a step back and they're like, well, this guy's on social media and he shot 3 deer already this year. I haven't even seen one. So I think if you take that opportunity to engage in the outdoors and try to learn about what you're going to do more so than just aimlessly walk into it, you'll be able to enjoy it more. You'll have more success, and overall it'll just be a better experience for you.
Tyler, how would somebody get a hold of you if they want to reach out to you?
I'd say my social media stuff is probably the best way. So like I said, it's at Hitting the Dream on Instagram. That's HIITing, the Dream. You can directly message me there. On Facebook, it is still at HIIT Outdoors just because they haven't switched it over. So either search HIIT Outdoors or pretty soon it'll probably be switched over. It's just for some reason when you try to change your name on Facebook, it's got to go through all these different, someone looks at it and tells you whether or not you're allowed to. So right now that's just HIIT Outdoors. You can message me there as well. I've got absolutely no problem with, like I said, people have asked me questions for where to go get a bow in a state that I've never been to. So I'm more than willing to help people out for any questions they might have or any concerns you might have. So on either of those you can. And I think there's even a link to my email on my Instagram. So you could do that as well.
Well, thanks so much. And I look forward to watching your progress and staying with you. And I'm not going to let a couple of years go by before we get together again. So on behalf of Whitetail Rendezvous and thousands of listeners across North America, Tyler, thank you so much for being an alumni of Whitetail Rendezvous.
Hey, thank you so much too. I really appreciate it. And God bless to you and all the listeners. Thanks again.
Thanks for joining us. Be sure to tune in tomorrow for another episode of Whitetail Rendezvous, where you can listen and learn from the experts so you can be more successful on your next hunt. Until next time, listen, learn, and succeed.